lot of this stuff I got from the Wiley-Blackwell Handbook of Operant and Classical Conditioning. So they have some stuff on parents and leadership, a bunch of stuff. It's actually quite an interesting book. Anyway, to explain how parenting can be used with operant conditioning, you could look at the behavior of a bad-mannered child. As a parent, you want to stop the behavior and promote good behavior, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Everyone can probably agree with that.
You don't want a gremlin running around. So the example I thought of was the kid acts out when you tell them they can't play video games.
Mm-hmm.
And according to what we just talked about, if you were to occasionally cave and let them play when they acted out, that habit is going to be more ingrained and harder to stop. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Compared to...
Sorry, I just kind of zoned out for a second.
This guy's real interesting.
I was just watching the candle like flickering and then Lo siento.
Oh,
please
God.
describe it again, my love.
So a kid acts out when you tell them they can't play video games.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, kicking, screaming, something like that.
Yeah, of course.
And according to what we just learned, because that partial reinforcement is more resistant to extinction, if you were to sometimes cave, the habit would last longer and it would promote the bad behavior longer.
The bad behavior?
Efficiency.
We are fast. We are good and efficient here. No time for two words. Yeah, of course. That absolutely makes sense. I think for sure most parents would be able to agree that if you give in to your kids when they're having a tantrum or don't agree with something you're doing, anytime you give in to them, it's just going to reinforce to them that if I act in this way, if this is the reaction I have to my parents, like they might not give in to me always, but sometimes they will. And that kind of, I guess, goes with the idea that partial reinforcement is the strongest way to maintain or get rid of a habit. And so if the kid knows that sometimes if I behave this way, they're always going to want to have those kind of outbursts or reactions because sometimes it'll work out for them.
Yeah. Well, and that's, you also have to be on the same page too there, because, again, just speaking hypothetically, if one parent is super easygoing and one parent's really strict, the kid will learn to go to the easygoing parent to get what they want, right? So
I guess, okay, this brings me actually to a little bit of confusion on this maybe, because I can see partial reinforcement coming into play in more than one way here. So again, if we're going with this idea of a child having an outburst over not being able to play their video games, I guess I can see partial reinforcement of, like, if it's partial, there can be multiple avenues of something happening partially, right? So I guess my thought is, which one is going to take effect? Because if occasionally if these terms are hard to use in normal language, but if part of the time you're punishing them and then part of the time you're not punishing them and letting them use their video games, which one is going to be what takes effect? Do you get what I'm asking?
repeat the last part again.
Okay. I don't know if this will make sense to you or to anyone listening, but what I'm trying to say is that if a kid is doing something you don't want them to do, and part of the time you let them keep doing it, and then part of the time you stop them from doing it,
Oh, I get what you're saying. The other side of the coin.
Yeah, exactly. Because like if both things are happening part of the time, what is it that says what the learned behavior will be from it? Dun dun dun.
That is a good question. I'd have to think of that.
Yeah. We can discuss it later.
Yes, I think
After
we'll
the
have to. I'll have to
podcast.
think about that.
If anyone has thoughts on that, put them in the comments and let us know, because that is not a well-formed thought, but if it makes sense to someone and you might have a reaction to it, let us know.
Yeah. What I was going to say is kind of similar to what you're saying, is that you can't just punish kids. Kids need some type of attention, and you deprive them of attention, or like, I don't know if getting what they want is the right word, but if you deprive them of attention and just be like cold to them, they're going to have like low self-esteem or lower self-esteem, and like not as strong of a sense of self. So just in the sense of the video game example, maybe suggesting a new habit instead of playing video games would be more effective at creating, stopping them from acting out. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that. So instead of creating this really negative energy around not letting them play the video game, you put an emphasis on creating positive energy and associations with doing something different than playing video games. So when they're playing video games and then you make the suggestion that, oh, well, it's not like, hey, stop playing video games. You're not allowed to play video games anymore. But it's like, oh, hey, like, let's go do this. So it doesn't feel to the kid like you're taking something away, but instead that you're giving more to them.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and just how our brains work, you build upon other habits that you have, right? And subconsciously, like, they influence the direction you go in life.
Yeah.
So you want to like direct them and encourage certain behaviors, because in the future it's going to help them out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So consistent with how you raise them and make sure you direct them. They'll have a stronger sense of self, apparently.
I'd be really interested in whether anyone listening that does have kids, if you have read up on any of this kind of research before, and maybe not necessarily in the context of like Skinner's research, but you've read, a book or something that discusses these kind of methods. If they're ones that anyone has tried to use, if you have found them to be successful or not.
I would definitely like to know.
I think that's where research becomes really interesting, is looking at how it actually can be applied in real life and how user-friendly it is, and whether it like really makes sense, because sometimes things can work a certain way in a study, but in real life there's so many external factors at play that, it's not as easy as the researcher might make it seem in their write-up.
I didn't find in the research on Skinner there if which is more effective, rewards or punishment. I would assume rewards are more effective at creating influencing a behavior, because I don't know if you've ever heard of the muddy road analogy.
I don't think so. Money road?
Muddy
road.
Yeah. So it's to do with like habits that are ingrained and in your brain, the synaptic pathways in your brain, and they're kind of like branching out, indicating like certain habits, and the thicker one of these lines on a brain scan is, the more ingrained the habit is. So the muddy road analogy is that it is hard to change a habit. Once you're in the ruts on a muddy road, it's very hard to get out of the ruts. But if you travel between the ruts, you can actually choose where you want to go. So it's easier to create a new habit than change an old habit.
Okay, yeah. Of course, that makes sense.